Hola chicos. So here today, this video is going to teach you about forming two commands. I'll refer to them as two commands. I'll refer to them as familiar commands, as you can see in the title. I'll refer to them as informal commands because that's what a two command is, or that's what the two form is. It's the informal form. So these are going to be the informal commands with one person. So someone that you use the to form with simply. So usually I will call them very often the to command, and specifically the affirmative to command. The affirmative command is something when you tell a person to do something, as opposed to a negative command where you tell them to not do something. So example, hablar becomes habla. The command habla, do this. We're saying speak. You know, talk to a friend of yours, say habla. That is telling them speak. Now, if it were a negative command, it would be don't speak, but the conjugation would be no hables. It's a little bit different, so it's not as simple as putting a no in front of the verb. So we're just going to focus on the affirmative today, just this form, because there is a separate form for the negative. So the affirmative, meaning do something. So again, we've got the affirmative two commands, also referred to as affirmative familiar commands or informal commands. I'll kind of refer to all of them. I tend to stick to two commands. I think it's a little bit easier when you think about what the, if you can match it up with the subject. So two commands, here we go. The way to form the two command is going back to basics. When you think about that, maybe this chart you learned before, and you had your yo form, and you're in that right here, you had your yo form, and then continuing down, you had your to form. And then right here, in this spot right there, pardon me, that's not going to look very pretty, but I'm trying to draw with a mouse. Give me a break. So here, this conjugation that you use in the present tense. So if you have the verb like hablar, it would be hablo in the yo form, hablas in the to form, and then here in this circle here, or oval, whatever this is the conjugation that we're going to use for the affirmative to command. And with hablar, it was habla. So that is your conjugation for that el and the ella and usted form of the present tense. That is also your conjugation for the affirmative to command. So for an AR verb, hablo, hablas, habla. Habla is the one we use. That's how you tell someone speak. You can look at some other examples that are listed here. Guardar. Guardar is an AR verb. It's regular, just, you know, guardalo, guardas, and then guarda. We've got the just simply the A ending. Now that might seem a little weird because we have a to command here. It's a to conjugation. However, it looks like it's third person. Just again, accept it, move on. That is your conjugation. When you're telling someone, you know, maybe to save the document, we're going to use this verb. But in there, now we have an ER verb. The ER verb is, remember, a little bit different. It's not going to have an A ending. It's going to have an E ending. IR verbs do the same. If you look at that last one, imprimir, right here, it's an IR verb. It also has an E at the end, which becomes imprime. So all these have in common, this is the third person singular form. All this entire column, this is the present tense, the el, ella, and usted form. So if you looked at these, and then you look at what is the affirmative to command, you'll see a 100% correlation. These conjugations in that middle column are the same conjugations that we have here in this last column. They're the same form. So again, it's just they coincide with one another. They're the same conjugation. Of course, different context that when we use them. But essentially when it comes to conjugating, it's pretty simple. It's back to basics with it. Now, one other thing I want to point out is that notice with verb like volver, we have an O in the stem here. And whenever we are in going back to our, our basic chart here, the yo form, the to form, and then here in the la usted form, this is what we know as part of the boot. When we have the boot, we have a stem changing verb. So if you had a stem change in the third person singular in the present tense, you are also going to have a stem change in the to command, in the affirmative to command. So volver becomes vuelve in that third person singular form, which means it also becomes vuelve with a UE in the to command. And the same thing is true with pedir. It's E to I in the boot, which means it's going to be E to I also in the to command, the affirmative to command. So that's how you form your conjugations. So whatever that form is, that's what it's going to be. There are going to be some exceptions, and we're going to talk about those irregular verbs in just a second. So go to our next slide here. So again, we already mentioned this, but you can see some examples. Okay, now here are our irregulars. Now these 8 verbs that are listed here, these are the 8 irregulars. These are the conjugations. The, as, be, pon, sal, se, ten, ven. Those are the actual words. This isn't the, I know they're so small. A lot of people think that these are the stems and we have to add something to them, or they think that they're the endings and we have to have something in front of it. Nope, this is the entire conjugation. You can see some samples of, when you're using full sentences, right? Sal de aquí ahora mismo. This is sal. This is by itself. There's nothing added to it. This is not the ending that it's attached to anything. This is the entire word. I know they're small words, but they are still, you have to treat them like that. Now, these, you can see, they all have something irregular in the present tense too. A lot of these are go verbs, right? Decir is digo, hacer, hago, pongo, salgo, tengo, vengo. Got a lot of go verbs in there, and then ir and ser are also in there. So these are verbs that are often irregular. They're also irregular here. Now, these, decir becomes di, hacer becomes as, ir becomes be, poner becomes pon. Now, it might seem like this is just going to take a lot of memorization, and maybe it will, but I do have a trick that can help. And I had a student teach me this a couple of years ago, and we're going to depend on our superhero, Vin Diesel. Ir and ver, just real quick while I'm going through this slide. They both have the same conjugation. They both become be, ve. Ir is be, ver is be. Now, the context will make it clear. One means to, go somewhere, and one means, to, watch. So the context should make it pretty clear what you're talking about. So here is Vin Diesel to the rescue. Now, if we remember this sentence, this can actually help us with these irregular forms. Vin Diesel has 10 weapons. If you remember that, that will help you if you keep these 8 verbs in order of, this is Vin Diesel has 10 weapons. Really, it's Ben Diesel has 10 weapons. Okay, that last part I know is a little bit of a stretch, but it does help us remember which verbs are irregular, as long as you can figure out which verb goes with which infinitive. So if you know Ben, because of Ben Diesel, cool, Ben Diesel. But you have to know what Ben comes from. Ben comes from venir, to come. So I might say ven acá, come here. Di is from decir, it's like di algo, say something, di algo. We need to have you got to remember that di comes from the verb decir, to say or to tell. Sal, you have to remember that comes from salir, as from hacer, ten from tener, be from ir. Again, it also be is from ver, but that's regular. If you were to conjugate ver, ver, in the present tense, ve o yo form, ves tu form, be, third person singular form, which is what we would expect. This is just not what we would expect, because the form of ir in that is ba. So it doesn't work. It's irregular. Poner comes, or pon comes from poner, se comes from ser. And now again, we also have seen this verb before in the yo form of saber, to say I know, yo lo sé, sé. Same verb form, it's just the context will make it clear what we mean. I might say, sé creativo, be creative. And as opposed to, sé la respuesta, I know the answer. So remember this little trick, ben diesel asten be ponce. And if you combine that with what we did in our first slide, then you will be in good shape. You should know how to form almost all of your conjugations. Now there's a little bit more to it, but this is pretty much it. This will get you really far, knowing this for affirmative to commands whenever you want to tell someone to do something.